Welcome, friends. It's almost midnight, and you found your way to the PikeCast. Come along as we careen through the catalog of the most formative horror writer of our young adult days, Christopher Pike. From adult perspectives, we'll revisit these YA books our parents probably would never have let us read had they known what lie inside. We tackle one book per episode in a freewheeling and unbiased chat. So grab your battered paperback, pull the flashlight from the kitchen drawer, climb under your bed covers, and devour a good book with us.
Greetings, fellow Pikers, and welcome to the PikeCast. I'm Cooper Beckett, and I'm thrilled to be joined by my lovely co-hosts.
Hi, I'm Cassie.
Hi, I'm Becca.
Welcome back, Becca. We hope you're feeling better.
Thank you. I'm doing much better now.
Well, good. It's a tough time of year and a tough time of health.
For sure.
In this episode, we're digging into Christopher Pike's 1986 book, The Tachyon Web. We're going to be dissecting it in great detail, spoiling each and every plot twist, so consider yourself warned. If you're enjoying the PikeCast, please leave us a review on the podcast service of your choice. But let's welcome this week's guest Piker, author, poet, and podcaster Ginger Bentham, whom I've actually been podcasting with for over 10 years now as co-host of Life on the Swing Set's Non-Monogamy podcast. I'm so excited to bring her here to talk Pike with us. Welcome, Gin.
Hi, I'm so excited to be here for this purpose, and I'm very delighted to meet you both, Becca and Cassie. Thank you for inviting me on your show.
We're happy to have you.
Thank you. And just the idea of being able to dip into the Christopher Pike nostalgia is just delicious.
Well, I remember how excited you were when I mentioned I was doing a Pike podcast and we had to get you on. So before we dig into the book, we have some questions that we ask of every guest. I believe Cassie has our first one.
Okay.
Yeah, so tell us a little bit about how you discovered Christopher Pike or what got you into him.
Oh, wow. That's a great question. So let's see. I'm of the age that Christopher Pike's books are true nostalgia. Like, we're very much in, let's see, gosh, what was I? I was in middle school. Yeah, I was in middle school. So I was the prime demographic, I would offer, and I am an absolutely voracious reader. I can't imagine that any of us here aren't voracious readers, where I would actually be reading multiple books back when there were only paper books at the same time. And it was tragic, actually, because what I would do is just stack them open. And so the bindings just hated me. And I would stack them open on top of each other. And then just whenever I wanted to pop another book out, I would read that one, and then that one would go to the bottom of the pile or back to the top or whatever it was. And so I'm trying to think. I want to say it was probably the library to start where I found them. And I will admit that my interest, as much as I do love horror, and I do, my first draw was the science fiction of the Tachyon Web. So with that being said, I would say that I'm not as a rabid Christopher Pike reader, but was always a huge fan.
Okay, that makes sense. So then what do you think about Christopher Pike specifically keeps you coming back to him so that he's the one that's on your mind from that time?
Well, the design of the books was beautiful. It was exactly what you wanted. It was like, it's like the book candy store. Like the aesthetics of those books were just irresistible. So it was definitely the aesthetics. Definitely for me, just being as prolific as he was, you knew you were going to get more, which, at the beginning you weren't sure, but then as it continued to happen, you were like, "Ooh, this is fantastic! I'm not going to run out of material to read. So I would say that also just the when you're living at that time and that's your age and you are living those relationship dynamics and those very like obvious like commentary on, ooh, she's cute, ooh, he's hot, ooh, it was so real in so many ways that you couldn't help but just feel like you were in it. So for me, that was a big part of it. And I will admit, I haven't continued over the years really diving back in on a regular basis. I definitely was excited to be invited back to reread. But yet they still are on my consciousness. I will admit it's probably just one big book in my brain right now. After all these years. I'm
noticing the same, Jen.
Is that right? Yeah. So to be able to tease out the pieces, like you start to do the thing where you just name random books and hope that happened in that book, but you can't really remember. So for me, it was very much tied to feeling like I was seen a bit as a young adult at that time.
I know that you mentioned that it's just like one giant book for you, but do any other ones stand out as like a favorite Pike book?
Oh gosh.
Well, I was impressed by how quickly you leapt on the Tachyon Web.
Oh yeah. Well, the Tachyon Web was the one that I reread because it really spoke more to me. I have to admit that my horror taste grew up really fast. I was already reading Stephen King. And so I was a little bit like, if I could reread Carrie, or if I could reread Pet Sematary, or if I could reread, I was and still am an absolutely rabid Stephen King fan. So I would offer that my horror attention went a lot more to reading those books. But I would say, gosh, if I had to pick one that I could really remember, I mean, it really was Witch, I guess, if I really had to choose, because it just like identifying with that like mystical special powers, being a witch was something I definitely romanticized. So that would be the one I would have to choose.
I like that one.
Yeah,
I'm excited for that one.
One's coming up at some point here. It's one of those that I was surprised wasn't in more demand. We had people jumped on like 5 books.
Oh, okay. Sure.
Like really hardcore. I want to do Monster. I want to do Midnight. And it's just like, okay. But then there are these others that are like real classic Pike that people just haven't grabbed, which it's interesting as we go into this. But let's dive into the Tachyon Web, which is an unusual book from what we've read thus far, because it is our first non-horror Pike book. And as such, it wasn't marketed the same way. So we have the back of the book and the artwork to talk about. Who wants to read the back of the book this week?
Becca, do you want to do it since you weren't here last week?
Sure. They did it for kicks. 5 young thrill seekers in a stolen spaceship on a joyride to the stars. But one of them had a more dangerous plan, to blast beyond the Tachyon Web, the iron boundary that barred mankind from the worlds beyond. There, they found danger, excitement, and heart-stopping adventure. And on a strange alien world, one of them would also find love. Dun, dun, dun.
It's a little less dun, 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 I think, than most of our Pike books.
Love can be scary.
Right,
It can.
I had to keep the consistency, okay?
No, I agree.
I appreciate it.
Yeah.
Now, I don't know who did the artwork on this one. It doesn't look like Brian Kotsky's traditional artwork. We have multiple versions. Jin has the UK version, which has no artwork on the cover.
Well, it has the geometrics.
It has
of
a geometric
the Tachyon
design,
Web.
yes,
Yeah.
but no painterly
Correct.
figures
Exactly.
like most Pike.
Right.
We have one that looks like a fairy tale kingdom, complete with a Super Mario Brothers mushroom in it.
The mushroom one is done by David Farron.
David Farron, okay.
Mhm.
And then we have a very, very pulpy, almost proto-Pike cover that I believe is the initial cover. And it's just some people at the bridge of a spaceship.
That color scheme is all Cassie vibes right there.
I do, yeah. I do really like the color scheme on that one. I will say the pinks especially are like, I love the space part. The girl, especially with her hair, I don't like it. I don't like the people in this one. They look so weird. What is his hand doing? It's awkward. I hate it. I like the Super Mario mushroom one. Because, okay, so since we're talking about the comparison, the mushroom one even has that weird bird creature from the book.
It
And I
does.
love that. I was like, I could perfectly picture it now. Like, I love it. But yeah, the pink is my jam. The outfits and stuff that's not even what they were wearing. Come on.
No. and it doesn't resemble and Sammy is on the back of the book in this one. He's sort of under the barcode.
Oh
on the back
yeah.
of the book.
Little computer nerd looking guy. I see.
Right.
him.
Right.
I like that there's art on the back like that. That's kind of cool.
So the artwork, it's reasonably, it's about the book, sure, but it's also not caring too much about the contents of the book. The back of the book is actually fairly damn accurate when it comes to Pike.
Okay, it is, but it made me think that they were going to go to an actual strange alien world and not onto a ship.
Ah.
Very true. Very true.
I expected like wildlife and stuff more so than what I got.
I mean, you got wildlife. You got a big old hive tree with weird honeybee birds.
I did. Yeah, no, that's right. What are they, Scylla or Sela or something?
Yeah.
I did. Yeah, I liked those a lot, obviously.
that make everything taste like candy. I mean, it sounds delightful, really.
It does.
It
Honey
reminds
air.
me of the Willy Wonka world where you can go and just stick your fingers in things and eat chocolate very unhygienically off your hands with everyone else.
Well, and especially when a fat German kid falls into the river.
Poor Augustus.
He never had a chance.
Augustus.
Well, let's move over to the Midnight Club where we dissect the characters from this book. Let's start with Eric Tyrell, who is the lead character. He is our pretty traditional Pike hero in that, according to himself, he isn't every female's fantasy, but knows he's not ugly. He's not tall or strong, but has a wiry frame. So Eric was a pretty good lead, and I know I'm going to go with a spoiler here. I saw, Cassie, that this is one of the rare Pike heroes that you actually liked.
The rare male heroes that I liked. Yeah, but well, he's not putting video cameras in people's shower rooms, so I mean,
the bar is low, is what you're saying?
Exactly. He's also, I mean, I feel like this one, he's not into things. Okay, so he's got a little bit of that, like, he's like, ooh, a pretty girl. Now I'm like obsessed and this is what I have to do. And so like you're a little one-dimensional, but also his motives in being in his head, like his perspective the entire time, his motives were never bad. Like they never came across to me as fuckboyish. It was always just like, wow, like this is a beautiful girl and I want to know her. It wasn't like I need to own her, you know? So I think that's why he didn't rub me super wrong. And I was just like, he's basic oatmeal, but he's okay, you know, like he's fine.
And he gets Twitter-pated when the girls hug and kiss him.
Aww.
Just like, oh my, I've been thinking about that kiss. It's like, okay.
He seemed
Eric.
younger than some of the other protagonists we've had.
He does. I didn't notice whether or not there were actual ages for the characters in this one.
I didn't notice either.
Usually it's a more obvious thing.
They do talk when they talk about cycles, when he's further on into the book, they're talking about cycles. This is a little sidebar of Vani's, or Vanny, depending on how your mind voice makes her name come across,
or veiny if you're nasty.
Veiny. Yeah, exactly. That's fair. I'm very grateful that you shared that, because I was right about to say it, and then my mind voice said it, and then I was like, wow, this feels like a different show now.
Yeah.
But what I would offer is, it was talking about being paired off at 22 cycles, and
yes, right.
their cycles were shorter, like around 300 days. So if we really wanted to do the math, I think we're showing up around between 16 and 17 is my guess.
Which is typical Pike character age.
Yeah, that's fair. That's fair.
And he is a theoretical force for good in the story. You know, like he gets a little overly zealous and overly righteously indignant, but at the same time, he is pushing for really good things. Like he wants, and I don't think it's just about getting in Vani's pants, but he wants to give them the hyperdrive.
Yes. Well, I want to pull it back to the beginning, when essentially he was invited in the story to choose a female companion for the trip.
Yes.
It's like, this poor guy, like, it is in this space of like, well, these two, I forget their names.
Carol and Barb.
Carol and Barb.
I'll
I knew
never
one was
forget.
Barb. Carol
Two
and
of the
Barb.
most 1980s,
Right.
teenager names.
Right. So Carol and Barb were washing their hair. So then there was like, what do we do now? And without dating apps and swiping, it was really slim pickings for poor Eric. But
yeah, he had to go after Dentinia
right.
Soule.
And she didn't want any of it. She was just immediately like, no, sir, goodbye.
I mean, it is the weirdest thing to have him mention two girls that he dated that don't want to go, and then call a third, which definitely doesn't want to go.
Right.
And she never comes back either. Like, I was like, okay, she's got to play some sort of role, especially with a name like that. And then nothing.
I mean, she has a first name, a last name, a weird name.
And awesome sci-fi name
isn't important at all to the plot.
Nope.
Yes, it's a very toothy name. It's a very
yes, it is. Yeah. Oh, I just kept reading Dentine and thinking she'd pass out gum to everybody.
Exactly, which can be useful on a long journey. You get pasty. Anyway, we were talking about Eric. Sorry.
Eric has dark features, black, long, curly hair. So just worth a note.
Space. Black like space.
Black like space.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, but I mean, I agree. He's a completely inoffensive character. There's nothing bad about him. There's nothing exceptionally good about him. He's a good miscellaneous neutral lead.
He did get a little bit of a charge, just of note. He got a charge when he started to get called Commander. Like you could feel him get a little puffed up then.
I mean, I would too, though, so I could understand that. Yeah.
Well, but there was that really, really wacky moment where Strem had been captured and he was being commander, and he Sammy asked if we should, tell the guards to drop their guns, and Eric says, no, if Strem gets to me now, he might beat me up. It's just such a weird little moment.
He had to watch his back. He had to be safe.
Don't let my friend beat me up.
Yeah, well, he's been through a lot. He's not going to lose it all just to get punched in the face by good old Strem Hark. Can we just...
and why don't we move on to good old Strem Hark?
Strem.
What a terrible name. It's like he wanted to name him Stream and they typoed it and left out a letter. Or maybe it's pronounced Stream and we're just all getting it wrong. It's so strange.
Wouldn't it have to have a little thing over the E to pronounce it Stream?
Maybe not in the future, Cooper.
Oh, okay, you're right. You're right. A future where the whole world speaks English, too. It is worth noting.
I could couldn't help but throughout that whole time, when as soon as it was Strem, and I remembered it was Strem before, and feeling, my what would it be, my 13 or 14-year-old self was like, ooh, exotic name, because my first boyfriend was actually Eric, so that wasn't exotic.
I was going to say, your first boyfriend was not named Strem.
No, he wasn't. It was Eric. But what I would offer is then, as now reading it as an adult, I kept getting that. Oh goodness, the character from SNL who always nicknamed everybody the Office guy. And
the Making Copies guy?
Making Copies guy. And in my head, as I'm reading it, it's like Strem, Strembone, Stromboli, I couldn't stop doing that. So I didn't take him as a character very seriously, I gotta be honest.
Well, I mean, Strem is a very specific archetype in Pike. And you really see it in the first description of him. Besides having the best physique strenuous exercise could build, and a face that was both humorous and strong, topped with uncombable blonde hair and lit with wild blue eyes. He is, like Ubermensch Pike character who's also obnoxious, hot-headed, and ultimately kind of a dick.
I need
Is
to
he
know what a
saying that he looks
humorous...
funny?
Yeah, I need to know what that means.
Becca?
You're welcome. I'm glad we had the same question at the same time. Yeah, like, what does a humorous face mean?
Is he just funny to look at?
Funny, haha.
Because I feel like they're like setting him up to be like a babe, and then they're like a humorous face.
I know, and I'm like, wait, is he ugly?
Okay, I read that as a smirk. That's what I.
Like he finds the world humorous,
Yes,
not
yes.
like we find his face humorous.
I don't think it's intended to make it sound like he's funny looking.
He should have worked on the phrasing for that, I think, a little bit.
I agree.
I mean, this is 1986. This is only year 2
Right.
of Pike Publishing, so we
This
gotta
is
keep that in mind. This is 1 year after the brilliance of Slumber Party.
Oh boy. I honestly though, I'm not even oh-boying in a bad way, because I think this was better than Slumber Party. So I feel like
no question.
go Pike. That's a lot of improvement.
I mean, do we have anything really to say about Strem other than he's
a colonizer? He just bursts in, wants to shoot people, doesn't want to help them. He talks about them like poorly, like they're all idiots compared to him.
It's true, he does.
He was an awful guy, and I didn't like him. And so at the end, when he might have died, I was like, oh well. But then Eric's like, my friends, screw everybody else, my friends. I was like, Eric, dude, what? No, what? So yeah, that was all else I had to say about good old Strem.
Wow. Well, you had very strong feels.
I did.
Let's move on to our second Sammy in the Pike verse. This Sammy is a boy and is another pretty stock Pike character, the computer nerd who spends most of his time actually working out the story.
I love it. I liked him. I like that his normal computer nerds are kind of sometimes like cowardly a little bit. Mm-hmm. And he wasn't. Like Sammy was like, I want to go. And they're like, no, you're more useful to us here. You have to stay.
Yeah, that's true. But it did feel again like a Pike simulacrum here. Like this is Pike's character. While you would expect it to be Eric, it's probably Sammy.
I dug that Sammy was more like was pretty stoic in that way, which I realize is part of the stock character piece, but was consistent, absolutely consistent throughout.
Yeah, very true. I have a quote about Sammy here. When he dressed in the morning, it was as though he put on the first thing his hand touched and didn't always check to see if it was a viable piece of clothing. Pale and underweight, his short stature was not helped by a chronic slouch. His one physical virtue was his long, wavy brown hair, which managed to maintain a lustrous sheen despite infrequent washings.
Yeah,
this doesn't give me a good mental image. Yeah, just
I love a man with greasy long hair, to be honest.
Greasy long hair that looks like he's like lived in a cave, like curled up in a ball for the last year.
You're telling me that you're not into cavemen?
I mean, I think more so the strong ones that will hunt and bring me back food so I can relax by the fire than the ones who are like hiding in the corner, like with lustrous sheen to their hair, maybe.
I mean,
So you want an UGG caveman, not a hermit, is what you're saying.
I mean, it's just you've got to provide. And what is Sammy providing in caveman times with his brain? Like, maybe he's building traps, and if so, okay, but I feel like his posture would be a little bit better if that were the case.
Damn,
Sure. You want someone to hunt and or gather for you.
Well, yeah, I mean, come on. Like, I could do the rest by myself. Like, that's the part that's going to be tough for me. I'm scared of animals. Like, I mean, I'm a puppy's okay. Come on.
You stole a pig 3 episodes ago, I think.
Look, I wasn't going to hunt him. He wasn't for food. He was to be my new replacement because my brother had just been born. I needed a friend.
Well, and frankly, it sounds like he could have been wearing a terry cloth towel at this point because he was.
It doesn't matter if it was a functional piece of clothing.
So I picture him with a pair of scissors, like cutting 2 holes in a terry cloth towel and just wearing it like a poncho, and being like looking in the mirror and going, "Yeah, that's what I was looking for." Boom.
Or like a lampshade, just like trying to stick his head through it. Like, this is a shirt.
I mean, honestly, now I just see Sammy as wandering around like Dr. Gonzo in the second half of Fear and Loathing, wearing the comforter over his shoulders where he'd cut a hole out through the center of it.
Straight
just
up.
like a poncho.
Yep.
Let's talk about our 2 girls who really don't have much of a part at all.
Except for packing exceptionally well.
Well, yes, very, very much so. Jeannie Clayway and Cleo Retson. Jeannie is Strem's girlfriend, and Cleo is Sammy's. Which surprised me because in reflecting on it, I really felt Cleo was more a Strem's girlfriend and Jeannie was more a Sammy girlfriend.
In terms of
because Jeannie is conservative and quiet, and Cleo is apparently a punk rocker.
Yeah, in terms of like who they were dating, I kept getting them mixed up. Like, I knew who Cleo was, I knew who Jeannie was, but when it was like who were they dating, I had no idea.
Well, I will mention that there is a weird side note in here that, Jen, I think you probably noticed too.
Yeah, okay.
So they got married when they were 22 and the relationships were monogamous.
Yes,
this was quite a change from the way things were back home these days.
Right.
Which to me says Pike's world is full of non-monogamy.
I saw that too. I am going to check that very dramatically off my list to mention. Yeah, I wonder though, I mean, with all that being said, this confusion about Jeannie and Cleo, and I admit I could see Cleo and Sammy being what they were because they both struck me as very self-centered and very, I mean, not in a bad way, but in a, I'm not sure how to relate to other people sort of way. And Cleo had her distractions, which seems to me was like baggage like nobody's business because she had lots and lots of goodies to share later on in the story. So I could see them because they both seemed quite eccentric and definitely the punk rock piece. And then, Jeannie just really just seemed like the holding pattern of a character that one can become. But I would offer about the monogamous pieces. I feel like that's a part of the titillation in general, and I realize I'm off topic here, but of the Pike books in general.
Titillation is never off topic on the PikeCast.
Okay, that's fair. So you just never really know about, I mean, it's monogamy-ish, but it's also like open-minded, like, you know what? Like the world of the young adults moves really fast. And so, that's kind of what I thought of it more as when he mentioned that monogamy, non-monogamy comment. But I did not remember nor re-expect, if one can, the word monogamy in the Tachyon Web.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. I do want to contrast the descriptions of the two characters because, Jin, you mentioning that Jeannie is like a holding pattern of a character. Just contrast these two. So Jeannie's description. She was dressed in a black leotard and her bushy brunette hair was tied with a yellow ribbon in a ponytail that reached to her waist. Jeannie was one of the school's cheerleaders and after graduating planned to study ballet, which she would certainly excel at. She looked graceful, simply walking across campus. She's also mentioned as being an uncomplicated person to the extent of being slightly dull. Now, Cleo has a voice that could have belonged to a 6-year-old if it hadn't somehow managed to sound so tough coming over the control deck's main speakers. She had a powerful singing voice, which she exercised regularly in a band, the Meek Pulverizers, a revival of very old music style of music. Sammy had once referred to as punk music. Cleo was wild. Her hair was seldom the same color 2 days in a row, and she was fond of chains and strange designs on her tight-fitting clothes. Without makeup and paraphernalia, though, she was a doll, short and dainty with fine red hair and an innocent dimpled smile. She should have been in a church choir, not on stage, shouting about racial prejudice and nuclear holocaust, especially since there was no longer any prejudice or nuclear bombs.
I think it's interesting that you don't find them like compatible. So like from my experience, as somebody with colorful hair who dresses probably like that character does, a lot of my ex-boyfriends in the past have been a lot like Sammy, like wiry little computer nerds. Like, and that's the thing, like Scott Pilgrim, like that is a thing. That's a stereotype that you see a lot. And I think a lot of it is that it's a contrast, but also like for the people, like you're saying that how she's so wild and she's so loud and she's so this and she's so that, and he's so not. So it's like one of those like opposites attract type things. And I really do. I think their relationship is very believable. And then also I think, if you're looking at the characters, not even from this book standpoint, but just like from an 80s, like even like an 80s, like crappy horror movie, like there are different. Strem would be like the jock guy, you know, and Jeannie, the dancer, popular kind of dumb girl, would be his girlfriend. So I think in that perspective too, they also fit, as do the rest of them. And then Eric being like alone and finding some wonderful girl through things, which albeit is less horrible and like horror-y, but
so Eric is Anthony Michael Hall.
I don't know who that is. I'm sorry. I don't know.
I'm sorry. I'm not laughing. I'm laughing, but I'm not laughing.
Young people.
I don't know. I'm just really bad at names. Like,
no, sorry. Anthony Michael Hall is the geek in Breakfast Club.
Yes.
Oh, okay. No, I do. Yeah. I know who that is. I just don't know names.
No, it was just the perfect response, Cassie.
Yeah, I love it.
So Cleo has the appearance of Manic Pixie Dream Girl, which, as you mentioned, Scott Pilgrim is the perfect example there. But she really doesn't serve a function like that, except for occasionally getting Eric's male gaze.
Yeah, I wish they were more fleshed out, both of them, because throughout the whole book, I kept expecting for both of them to become a character, and they were just like a description of a character instead, which sucks.
All we get is, they insisted on helping. Oh,
and then they suit up and go in suddenly. Like
there was also a part at the end, and I'm looking, where they literally are talking about protecting the girls, and that they showed up as parcels of humanity to protect rather than people who played a part, which, we have to admit, Cleo did play a significant part, albeit a very absurd part in the story, which made me just smile unbelievably that she happened to have all of the gold skin.
Oh yeah, basically we've just met for the first time in human history an alien race, and it just so happens I have brought enough costumes to mimic that alien race right here.
And the fact that she stains contact lenses, and then what is that? Is that a thing? Because this whole time I'm reading this, I'm like, that's not how that fucking works.
I really don't think that's a thing.
No. And if I had been 13 reading this, because this is one that I
Fair.
did not read when I was younger, I would think that that's how that works. And I'd be like, yeah, I can just get contacts and stain them any kind of color I want. It might irritate my eyes a little bit, but no big deal. I can still see.
But everything will be green, as Eric has told us.
Yeah, like I don't think this is one of the, there's so many things in Pike books that I'm like, wow, he really knew about this, but this is one thing that I'm like, he did not really know about this.
Well, let's talk about our manic pixie dream alien. What do we want to call her? I think I heard it in my head as Vani.
That's how I heard it.
Okay. Let's go with Vani then. We only find out what she actually looks like late in the book because his eyes are blurred by dyed contact lenses the entire time. Her eyes are polished emeralds. Her soft golden face is a picture of all he had tried in vain throughout his adolescence to draw in his mind.
Sorry.
He fell hard for this alien.
I mean, do you blame him?
Yeah, three girls, Barb back home and Carol are like, fuck you, dude.
Yeah.
He's like, all right, I can't even do anything else here.
I talk a lot about you should approach people you're interested in because really nothing bad is probably going to happen. But Dentina in this really demonstrates how randomly something bad can happen.
That's like the worst nightmare too. Like the coldest, harshest, immediate rejection with no reason and no remorse. Just no.
Right.
Hang up.
And he was told beforehand that she was definitely going to say yes. So like,
And that she was kind of stupid.
And he didn't even want to go with the girl. Like he was just like, I guess, so I don't have to be the fifth wheel. Sure.
right, then he gets shot down. He didn't even want it. He didn't even want it.
But
And in his defense, he didn't immediately go ahead and start insulting her and being like, "You're fat and ugly anyway, bitch." You know, like so. Again,
like Twitter
I like
DMs.
Eric a bit more.
So he's less like a modern character or a modern boy than a good person, like a actual good person, not like a nice guy.
No, yeah.
Good person.
He's
But
a good
back to
person, not a
Vani.
nice guy.
I thought, once we got into the love story portion of this, I enjoyed it a lot more, even though it was fairly trite the whole time. But we did have, I wish the whole book had been that. Because the sharing of cultures and sharing of information, that was very interesting to me. And that made me like Vani as a character.
I feel like, and this is kind of why I love it. And of course, rereading it, I knew all of those things. I don't know if this was your first read. Well,
yeah,
I think
this was all of our first read.
It was all your first read.
Yeah.
So for me, it wasn't my first read. And what I love about that is there is a purpose to Eric's really sad state of affairs with girls, and I'm saying girls appropriately here. And then I don't know about you, and this may be some serious self-disclosure, but the idea of having an alien like hot partner as as a date in my teens was my pinnacle fantasy. So for me,
I'm totally on board with that.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, I definitely
so for me, Vani was exactly what of course Eric would get, because of course I would get that, as Jin would get that, because I was, down on my luck in love. And of course there's an hot alien waiting for me well beyond the Tachyon Web. Of course there is. And Vani was that. I mean, she's more simple, like the whole concept of an alien culture being, more simple, not simple. I just mean less technologically advanced, which was a shock as you're reading, because you expect, of course, that the aliens are going to be well beyond us technologically. So for Pike to take that turn was fascinating. And so to be able to receive her as this simple farm girl, in a galaxy far, far away, or same galaxy, but we won't split hairs. I just go to that place of everything about her satisfied the fantasy that I had at the time for many years. And frankly, maybe still too.
I'm curious, did you read Monster?
I haven't lately.
Okay,
So I
you
can't really
give that one a
comment.
reread, because
Okay.
that's like the opposite. It's a young teenage girl who finds a vampire alien who's awful.
Oh, sure. Yeah.
So
It
there's
also
that.
has a girl dancing in the woods in a leotard, though. So you've got that
That's
girl
true.
dancing
That's true.
thing
Dancing in a
down.
leotard.
Yeah.
Yeah.
For me, I think Vonnie was she was like kind of Pollyanna-ish. She was like so nice and just, she didn't, I don't know. So usually we get like these characters from Pike who are girls and they're like a little bit sassy, a little bit weird, like maybe not super nice to everybody. But they're usually pretty fleshed out. And for her, she just felt like I don't know, like a plot device, really. Like she's so beautiful and she's conveniently like also into you, and then also conveniently like super trusting. So even though like her alarms should be going off inside, like, and she should not be helping this person, like she's just going to go all out and do everything he says to do because I trust you. And then like, I don't know, it was just so convenient. And I wish there had been something to balance out all of her niceness so that she was a little bit more believable for me.
I think that was just like maybe them showing like, because like later when we meet Rack, they talk about how like the alien race is like super peaceful. So like I just feel like maybe that's why she's like not like, that's why she's trusting him.
Yeah.
I felt that
and
too.
I do get that. I get that. I think that makes sense too. And I mean, if she's really young too, she meets somebody who seems a little bit different, so that's
Right.
like enticing to her, and so she wants to, like, this is also maybe her big like adventure if you were to see it from her view. And I do get that. I think maybe I wish, I don't know. I don't know, because they just make it a point of how she's like so perfectly beautiful, and then he just like ends up with her, and it's like, and she's also super nice and perfect and just great.
Right.
Look at this great time.
He didn't only end up with her; she was assigned to him.
Which is so, that was just a whole weird side. That was weird also. She's like, you're my job now. Like, what? What about your trees? Who's taking care of the trees you've been watching for years?
That's a fair point. That is a concern because the weird upside down pear-shaped non-coconut coconut fruit that Strem just threw into the dirt
almost broke his face on.
Right, exactly. So who's taking care of her trees? And yet at the same time, I draw that line to their culture then assigns you someone. So she might have been feeling the pressure. So the idea of getting assigned him as a job might have had other dimensions that perhaps culturally speaking, from a cultural relativism perspective, she might have been like into it because they seem to have chemistry for sure.
Right. Because, right. I see what you're saying. Because they said that if they didn't pick themselves, they would be assigned. So maybe she's like, okay, well, I'm about to be in my 20-second cycle.
Right.
Like,
I like this guy. Let's just do this.
She might have been just excited to try him on for size. And, frankly, I in my mind, I also engineered it so that she maybe advocated for herself because she was kind of coming into that relationship.
So she's like, I already know him. I can help him, blah, blah, blah.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. I like that.
Yeah.
I just wish she'd been sassy or something, like, made a snarky comment more.
Well, it made me really surprised that we don't have more from these two. Like, this is the second Pike book in a row now, Scavenger Hunt and this one, where it felt like this is the beginning of a series, not the only book. Like, I'm reading this thinking like Ender's Game. Ender's Game had very similar philosophical views of going into outer space, and Ender's Game was the year before this. And I really was feeling like, okay, a second book in this series would no longer feel the need to inundate me with machinations on how this society works. Because,
we could get into a lot faster.
Yeah, that's what really was a slog in the beginning of the book for me, was we had to learn about interstellar travel, about high school, about how they, about Uncle Dan's shipping lanes, about international. It's like, okay, great. Can we get to character again, please?
Yeah, there was a lot. I have a thought about Vonnie that I want to share because there was a regarding the sass. There was a ray of hope because it did, at one point when she came on to the Excalibur, Eric noted that she had taken to their humor quickly.
Oh yeah, because she pretends to be horrified by what he looks like.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So
That's
I
true.
feel like there were burgeoning moments where that interest in her wanting to be more sassy, like, again, to your point, Coop, like, let's take these characters beyond. I completely agree. Because there was also, and I realize this is like in that same other vein of high school shipping lanes, there was also a lot of who's what, where, when.
Yes.
During, like, are you floating? Where's the gravity? What are these, tools that we're using? What are these, like, jetpacks we're using? So there was a lot of detail, which I actually appreciated from a visual perspective of, like, but it was a lot of prose about details that we take for granted.
I think what really made it feel like a slog is knowing that this is a 204-page book and we're spending literally like an Ender's Game amount of time on this content, but not in a 500-page book. I almost saw the door closing on character.
I think based on what you've said about Vani, I'm going to rewrite her in my brain now from whatever I've read. And I think she's going to be like Starfire from the TV show, like the cartoon Teen Titans, because she's very like fun and very trusting and very sweet and very nice and not sassy. I think me personally, because I like Raven more, that's the kind of thing I'm looking for. But if I like put her in my head as Starfire and more of that type of character, I like her more now because that's just who she is. Yeah. Okay.
Well, also, you gotta assume that some sass may be lost in translation.
That's true. And I know that they did have an actual language barrier and that they were trying to bridge that gap. So I totally think that as they, that's why, again, I would really want a second book because we could see how their relationship develops and how they get to know each other and how he acclimates. Because that must be so weird. The one human being plunked down in this whole entire like civilization. So anyways, yeah. Okay.
There's a lot there.
There is. I want more.
Okay, we have two commanders who get about the same amount of screen time and about the same amount of character development. We have First Counselor Rack, who is the commander on how are you pronouncing the alien race?
Can you spell it? I don't have it in front of me.
Kaulikan, Kaulikan.
My mind voice says Cowlicans.
I said colican, like cauliflower.
Yeah. Okay. Well, he is the head guy of their fleet of. They call them worlds, right? Yeah. Their fleet of worlds, which are the ships, and he has to meet head on with High Commander General Griffin, who I just pictured as George C. Scott from Dr. Strangelove the whole time.
Interesting. Mine was Tom Skerritt.
Okay. Nice Tom Skerritt or mean Tom Skerritt?
Oh, definitely mean, but with that soft underbelly because we learn. Okay. Yeah.
I pictured him as the guy who plays the guy from the newspaper in the Spider-Man movies.
J.K. Simmons. And I really liked the we will get into this in plot, but this is definitely a book that's a commentary on colonialism and invasion and war politics in the 80s and environmentalism in the 80s. So we have a very benign and quiet leader in First Counselor Rack, who's willing to retaliate, but doesn't want to.
Who, by the way, is also racked with grief that his entire civilization was vaporized by a nova.
They just watched it explode in a nova.
And they had to pick and choose. It was full Sophie's choice who got to get on the ship. So it's big stuff.
Yeah, and that really is a lot there because they've been on these ships for years. watching, right?
Yeah.
5 years.
Well,
yeah.
5. Yeah.
So they got on these ships knowing it was going to nova and got to watch it for 5 years, and then it did. That's a really rough spot.
I
think, didn't it nova right after they?
Yeah, I think they took off,
right.
And then as soon as like they were away, like
right.
or like far enough for it not to kill them, then it went
Exactly.
off, and then they watched all of their like world implode or die or whatever. And then they were stuck trying to get to this next place, Lyra or whatever, for the next 4 years or 5 years or whatever.
No, the next, that's generations away.
Yeah, no, they're not going to get there anytime soon. Well, by the end of the book, hopefully.
Well, they will.
But,
they will now. When apparently they can build an entirely new type of propulsion system in a few months.
Just a couple months with some
because
notes.
it's
No
that
deal.
simple.
Yeah,
it's one of those inventions that's like, oh my god, why didn't we think of this?
It's
well,
full
one guy
MacGyver.
accidentally find it, right?
Yeah, totally. General Griffin, he struck me as an idealized military leader. Like, ultimately, he's a good man, and ultimately he has his own tragedies that he's drawing on. There's a lot of wish fulfillment in this character, and I can totally see it in 1986 being wanting the high commands of countries to have their better angels in mind, because it was the height of the second nuclear crisis,
Yeah.
But otherwise they were fairly straightforward characters. They were basically just two sides of a coin.
I will say that they had a little bit of like a weird interaction to where a couple of times I thought there was going to be like this twist, like, oh, they're brothers, or like they know each other or something like that. Because, but
I actually was waiting for something to come out like that too, because of how similar these people were to humans.
And then they greet them, like the men greet each other, and they're like, he's like, but then it turns out it's just because he's been watching them. But in that time, I was just like, oh, this is it. Like, there they go. They're twins or something, Like, I know it doesn't make any sense, but I was like, he's going to wash his face off. The glitter's going to go away, and he's going to reveal he is also.
Wow, you were hoping for a full-on twist.
I didn't know there could have been anything happening here,
That's
I
true.
don't know. I don't know. Pike has spoiled me with a lot of like out of this world stuff. So I'm like, I never know what's going to happen. Mind is blown.
It made me think that General Griffin had like been like gone to their planet before the nova vaporized it. Like, that is where I thought. So it was like a flip side, not brothers as much, but more like he had been an advanced team somehow. So he had a soft spot for the Calicans.
Like too. Which again could be something explored in a sequel.
Yeah, agreed.
Okay.
Or if he's a brother, he was separated at birth. That could be explored too. I'm just throwing it out there.
You really want that brother thing.
Look, maybe cousins, some kind of relatives.
Yeah. Or have the same mother, like his mother went on, a private mission or to,
So good. We're going to co-write this.
They're going to be star-crossed siblings.
Please do. I want to read it.
Yeah. Well, let's take a commercial break, and when we come back, we're going to hit Remember Me, which is our plot discussion. So we'll be right back with more of the PikeCast. Wow, friends. Where else can you get this kind of programming than the PikeCast? Nowhere. That's where. But we're trying to keep the lights on here. If you like what you're hearing and want it to keep happening, jump over to our Patreon at thepikecast.com/Patreon and throw us a few bucks to join our private Discord server. Higher tiers get books, stickers, bookmarks, and even personalized shirts. That's thepikecast.com/Patreon.
Once, Osgood and Frost were the up-and-coming stars of the burgeoning paranormal investigation TV show craze before a hoax put an end to their friendship, partnership, and television careers. Now, over a decade later, Prudence Osgood is a barely functioning alcoholic ghost hunter for hire. Her yearning for mystery and adventure is reignited when she receives a cryptic, untraceable email. She can't resist embarking on an investigation that tugs threads, winding through a sinister series of disappearances, her former partner's family, and a night 20 years ago when a semi blew a yellow light and nearly killed her. Reviewers are calling Osgood Is Gone a masterfully vulnerable and relatable 21st century horror story, and a bourbon-soaked supernatural mystery with sparkling dialogue that sticks the landing on LGBT characters, and main character Prudence Osgood, as tortured as she is clever, broken in all the best ways, and a true heroine for our times. Buy it today at Osgood Is Gone as a paperback, ebook, or audiobook narrated by me, JJ Ronvier.
Welcome back to the PikeCast. Let's move into Remember Me, where we talk plot that we haven't already talked about here. I mean, we have gone into a lot of details, but really the things that struck me most were these little notes that felt like this was a response to climate change. Like specifically these notes from Rack about when their sun went nova. Sometimes I have thought that our sun, watching from its place in the sky, grew tired of our foolishness, of the many chances we did not take, and decided enough was enough. And then when we started to live as we should, when the light of our sun began to change and deepen our shadows, it was too late. Now you tell me that's not about climate change.
Yeah, I love that. I love that they also mentioned how they were like just infighting as a world, and then they could have put that toward progression as a race and as people, and instead they just fought, and that set them so far behind, which I was like, oh shit, like that's us now. Like, oh no, and we haven't learned.
And it feels extra real here 35 years out.
Yeah, which is wild.
Yeah.
35 years. Jesus.
I know, right?
Anyway.
So, no, that's kind of my favorite part. I would offer the 35 years aspect, because having read it then and really resonating with what you were saying, Coop, about the nuclear atmosphere at the time, or nuclear environment, nuclear policy, like all of those pieces are there, and I have such a different vantage now. One of the things that I love that Pike did is he based all of this in real space lingo. So the Tachyon Web's not real, but think about Starlink. Think about, like, it's a totally different scenario, but we're establishing Wi-Fi for the entire planet. That's circling the planet right now, and all of these, like Mercury being the sadly the Australia of the solar system, where they're shipping all of the folks who need to work off their penance. Even though
it does have air conditioning. I will mention.
Yep, it does have air conditioning, but it's still apparently untenable. But just even with the mention of all of these planets, all of these all of the stars that are mentioned, it's all set in what we have named these pieces of the solar system. The galaxy, I should say, and the galaxies beyond. So there's not this completely fantasy world, that it's really built on the real names of a lot of these structures. And then also there's a reference to even the unified field. And at the time, I mean, that was all still incredibly out there pseudoscience, and now we're in a space where physics are coming together, and I find it fascinating reading it again 35 years later and recognizing that this plot, while far-fetched, how far-fetched is it really anymore? In some ways very still, yet at the same time this exchange of technology is really fascinating. This, at one point, there's the reference to, it's not our place to insert this into their civilization, that we're somehow reaching in and giving them this technology, and it's messing up fate vector, if you will. I don't know. I found the bigger questions of plot to be really fascinating.
I thought that part of like how they can't interfere, I thought that was very Star Trekian of it. And I was like, yeah, prime directive, you cannot interfere. You have to stay away from everybody else. Like you can watch, but don't give them anything. And then, you know, I was swayed because I was like, save the people, save them. You have to save them. Give them technology.
And it is interesting when you look at it as he took a memory card out and gave it to them. So this futuristic idea that on a tiny microchip they could store all this data and maps and instructions. He took it was a compact flash card. He just took it out and gave it to him. I thought that was delightful. It's funny because the plot struck me as oddly balanced at the beginning, but the way it wrapped itself up, where it became a philosophical discussion almost, really started to hit home for me. When it was, teenagers joyriding in a spaceship,
right?
I was not as interested.
It was spring break, man.
Spring break, woo!
I liked it. I know you didn't like the setup in the whole beginning, but I was so into it because we haven't read a lot of sci-fi ones. So I was just like, yes, spaceships. Yes, like spring break, we're going to go fly a spaceship. Oh no, we don't want to go to Mercury. Like for some reason, I don't know. I loved it. I was so excited about and I normally too, I don't like a lot of like romance aspects normally in books. Just because I don't know, it pulls me out of it for some reason. And I'm just like, I don't know. I don't like it. And so when I was reading this, they didn't have a lot of that for most of the book. Like he didn't even have, other than Dentata or whatever. Dentina. Other than
Dentata would be, I know a woman
that's where I went.
Her last name is Dentata.
I kept reading it as that and thinking about that movie. So, but yeah, I mean, maybe it's a good thing he didn't end up going out with her. He could have had a different sort of adventure.
That would be the regular Pike book.
You're not wrong. That would have been like, Monster 2 or something. I don't know where I was going with that. I liked it.
Do we have any other thoughts on the overall plot?
Well, I would like to mention, because I don't really have much of an opinion on this book at all.
Okay.
I also didn't like the beginning, like you, Coop, with all the the info dropping. Wasn't a big fan. But I did like the fiber optic wardrobes called Opans.
Yes. The mood suits.
Yes, and I want my own. So that was probably my favorite part of the book. I'm gonna be honest. I'm sorry that I
would you really though? Because there's a game that I play, and they have this thing where you can wear this bracelet or any kind of jewelry, and it changes with your mood. And I'm like, it tells you couldn't hide anything from anyone around you. Like you wouldn't. And me personally, like that would betray everything that I'm thinking because I'm just. And I try not. That could put you in so many awkward situations. The whole time I was reading, I was like, oh God, I would hate this outfit. Like I would turn it off all the time.
like Eric specifically wonders what a pair of Opants would respond to on Cleo, and what it would look like on. Oh, now I can't think. Bonnie, yes.
Yeah.
So he wants to use them exactly what you're afraid of, Cassie.
Yeah, to tell what they're thinking. And then I did think it was really interesting touch that because the aliens are different, their emotions are different, and so the pros read them differently. Yeah, that was really cool.
I would also offer, I have to smile about the Opants situation. Two pieces. The first one is, yes, the idea of a mood ring or a mood something that a dude can ask his love interest to wear, but then noticing that when Vani wore hers, her colors were different from his. So her happy was blue, his human happy was yellow. So there was also a translation issue of the actual Opants or Uppants, whatever it was. But that brings me back to the other piece of the plot of the flimsiest part of this whole thing, which is this in my opinion, of borrowing the uncle's ship to bring the things that get vaporized into ash. And, Strem's like, oh no, the Opants. Like you just have that moment where you're like, wow, like that is more like a Weekend at Bernie's sort of plot situation where there's this really there's this uncle that it seems to be the unspeakable uncle that everybody reaches for their wallet after he leaves the room, but he was such a part of how they got the ship to do this in the first place. That part for me, even on the second read, was just like, wow, that was an incredible stretch. Yet at the same time, if it was a campy teen film in the 80s, it was perfect.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. We do have 2 moments of major foreshadowing in the book. More, actually, but 2 moments that really stood out for me. One was God only knew what emissions from a nearby nova could do to their equipment. And the other is, did your uncle get the seal on the Pre's cap repaired? The board shows minor pressure discrepancies.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. It's like, okay, well, these 2 things are probably going to come into importance soon. And Pike really has trained me to be looking for his obvious tells. Well, let's move on. Normally at this time, we would be going to the eternal enemy, but really there isn't an enemy in this. You could call the patrol the enemy, but that's more of an abstract. There isn't a bad guy in this book. So let's move on to Thirst, our section about titillation and sexuality in Pike's world. There's not a lot of it in this one. Most of the titillation in this is Eric lusting after girls.
Mm-hmm.
Eric very much enjoyed the girls' goodbye kisses. Like, very much enjoyed them. Like, a lot. That's weird. Eric followed at her feet, admiring the muscled curve of her calf through the hem of her pants. And couldn't see the smile on his own face, but could feel its tips. Wait a minute. But could feel its tips brushing his earlobes.
The tips
What
of his
the fuck is
smile?
that? Let me read that.
Yeah, read it
Completely
again.
to you.
I'm trying to place it.
Eric couldn't see the smile on his own face, but could feel its tips brushing his earlobes, especially when Cleo gave him a tight hug and Jeannie planted a warm kiss on his lips.
It was his
Is he
wig.
turning into the Joker?
I think it was his wig. It was his white-haired wig that was touching his ears, right?
It said it was his smile.
The tips of his smile. I don't know. I can't remember the last time I smiled so hard that I fell to the tips of my
On your
smile.
earlobes.
I think it's happening to me right now.
When you think about that, that's horrifying. That is horrifying.
Okay. I mean, poor guy. Needs some action.
He really does. If he gets that excited by a hug and thinks about it for, minutes afterwards.
Right. Well, that's why we need the next book.
Yes,
Again.
yes. So he can get some hot alien love.
Exactly.
So that's really it for Thirst. This is a unique Pike book in that we don't have most of our Pikeisms that we normally get. Believe it or not, there was no McDonald's.
There
was a burger, though.
There was a burger, yes,
Yep.
but no McDonald's. And there was what sounded like that ambrosia salad thing that women in the Midwest make with the marshmallows and Jell-O. That's what it sounded like for their food, to me.
Yeah.
Are you too young to know what ambrosia salad is?
I didn't know it by name, but now that you
I knew what that was, but
yeah.
I didn't. I thought that they just had like regular looking food because they said it looked like Jell-O and then the other one looked like rice, but then they tasted like melted ice cream and marshmallows. So
it made me really crave Fruity Pebbles, actually.
Yeah, there was a weird sort of dissonance with the food situation, but also I feel like there was a little bit of joy in it where Eric was like, oh my gosh, I just get to shovel this sugary tasting stuff into my face that looks like rice and looks like, well, Jell-O would just be Jell-O. But yeah, I find that to be a really fascinating projection of the young adult want at the time.
I do feel like in the future they can probably make Jell-O have whatever nutrients it needs and taste like whatever you want.
Yeah.
Really, like the Jelly Belly company should get on that. Make us healthy things that taste like Jelly Belly flavors, I think. It's all I've ever wanted, really. Okay.
I'm just going to say that ambrosia salad needs to not have walnuts in it, though.
Oh, God, no.
It mostly does, though.
See, my mother knows how much I hate walnuts and things, so she would never have made it like that.
Well, there you go.
My mom never made me ambrosia salads, and I'm jealous.
Right.
Well, it was really like a barbecue staple. Like you'd bring it in a Tupperware container.
Yeah, there was a whole Midwestern phenomenon of calling things salad that were actually dessert.
Yes, very true. Many things with marshmallows were called salad.
Correct.
Okay, die softly then. We talk about moralizing and problematic elements in the writing and plot. I have one. Does anyone else have anything?
I do not.
I don't either.
Okay, really the only problem I had in this whole book is, do you still want to rent a mini sub and see if we can ram some sharks?
Oh, yeah.
I forgot about that, but
and
wait.
That's Eric asking that.
What?
Yeah.
I remember reading that and being like, what the hell does
while
that
they're in Baja.
Yeah.
so
See
weird.
if we can ram some sharks.
That's
I
rude.
have to say there was one other one, but the ramming sharks one, I multiple times have had just like glossed right over that. In my head, I made it to mean something different. I don't know why. I was just like, why are we doing that? Although that does sledgehammer in the whole nature sucks. We need to do better. We need to do better. But it's a sledgehammer. It's quite a sledgehammer there. I have another one. The very end when Eric is just going to get a brand new ship.
Yes.
Like, it's like, oh, I gave them
I gave you this. Maybe you make me one.
You make me one so I can then, carry on with my spring break adventures as the earthling that I am, because of course they're going to just give me a ship so Vonnie and I can go meet up with friends on the next spring break. That part just felt a little smarmy, little like, really? Is that what you get? Like, I don't know. Like, you brought guns everywhere. Everybody's pointing guns at each other on a regular basis.
Someone destroyed an entire factory ship?
Yeah.
Which I assume made something you wanted.
Right. So I feel like there were a lot of, back to the colonialism aspect there at the end, that were very broad brush strokes that made me very uncomfortable.
Agreed. Which brings us to the season of passage then. So as I mentioned, there are not many Pikeisms in this book at all. One thing is I had a little bit of a noir aspect of my uncle would risk anything for a buck, but he wouldn't lay out a cent to satisfy even his curiosity. But really, taking place hundreds of years in the future, it makes it hard for Pike to do some of his traditional stuff. There was no women admiring other women. There was no, there was a lot of thirsty lusting. That was, but even chaste thirsty lusting, really. So it was interesting. Yeah. I have some passages that qualify for the best writing in the book. As the empty miles grew into numbers the human mind could not properly grasp, the sun shrank and faded. I like the human mind could not possibly grasp part there. But there's a big section here. This is really interesting to me. Excalibur's hyperdrive turned on. As time did not exist in hyperspace as it did in the relative universe, the marvelous mechanism was on and off in the same instant. Nevertheless, the human mind has thoughts and feelings that come and go without the tiniest tick of the clock. Eric had the sensation of stepping outside himself and turning around and finding that he was still in the same place. There was no light in the interdimensional abyss, but neither was there darkness, and he suffered from neither heat nor cold. Still, emotions often care about nothing for the surroundings. His disorientation chased the skipped light years like a meteor through the nighttime sky. When the blink of time and space was complete and the rays of an exploding sun flooded the bridge with an unbearable glare, Eric repeated his question, "Where are we?" That's pretty good.
Mm-hmm.
Jen, do you have any good writing segments?
I was actually just flipping through. I would offer that I was really transfixed by Vonnie's farm or garden or the space that is reflected from her world. I don't have passages handy, yet I was very transfixed by the Sela creature. I was transfixed by the idea of a waterfall within that space, and so there was this really lovely and gentle reverence for nature, and I really enjoyed that coming together in that space. It almost had a little bit of a, I'll admit, water park, like indoor water park feel to it.
You could almost hear the echoes bouncing off the geodesic dome ceiling.
Exactly. Yeah. At the same time, I was transfixed by that. I was also transfixed by the fact that this culture was inviting in the light of the nova that vaporized their world, because they had to. The food was still growing. They would raise and lower to create what seemingly was a sunrise, sunset to grow the food. And so there was something about all of that. The language in particular, to me, was lovely, but it was more that concept of making peace with what was happening and recognizing that there was a lot of grief and tragedy in letting in the light of the nova, and yet the worlds, all of those ships, required that. And so I wouldn't say it was a particular passage per se, but it was very much that whole part of the story, whole part of the scene setting that I really just found lovely and gentle and genuine, and a point of connection between Eric and Vonnie.
I really enjoyed those sequences too. It made me irritated as Eric was when the voice of Sammy reminded them, you have something to do, right?
Mm-hmm.
I have one more big passage here that I really liked. The silent sense that he was about to cross a line drawn by destiny persisted and began to weave rich images as he started to doze. He saw swelling stars that were far older than the sun, consuming in a few violent hours the reserves of a fuel supply that had lasted many eons, and arid planets where people walked that were not really people at all, but beings evolved out of seas that had centuries ago dried on winds that no longer blew. Of course, he often dreamed of the unknown, and surely whatever lay beyond the Tachyon Web would remain unknown and never think of him. I thought that was lovely. And just an example of the lyrical nature of some of Pike's writing. And I have one line that qualifies for bad, as far as I'm concerned. Strem got upset about as often as a bench complained about being sat on. I mean, what even is that?
I love that.
So he never gets upset then?
Yeah, that's what it seems to indicate, but he does get upset. So there's that.
What a strange random thing. Like as often as a pear complains about being eaten. Like, okay,
right.
that's not a thing that happens. Like, I get it. You could have just said he
Off the
doesn't do
wall.
this.
Yeah.
So strange.
Now we'll move into the last act where we give our ratings. Jin, this is out of 5 pikes, and this is based on Pike books. So like we evaluate King books with other King books, but but this is based on Pike for Pike books. So you can give it 1 through 5. And if you want to oomph it up a little bit, you can throw something on top of a pike, although that feels very violent with this book. But you get to go first as you are our guest. So what is your rating out of 5 pikes?
Oh my gosh. So I don't have any context, but this is the hard part. I chose this book for a reason because I do love this book.
Mm-hmm.
And so I would have to, I don't know how generous or stringent
you can give it 5 if you love it. It's okay. We have done that before. I
feel like for me, I'm gonna give it a 4. Can I give it a 4.5? Is that legit?
Yes, absolutely.
Decimals, of course, because we're talking the future here. And full metric system. So with that being said, I need to offer, I have always pined for more Pike sci-fi. I've always pined for this idea of a second book or a series with these characters. I feel as though that for me is what spoke to me about this book and what I always wanted more of. And not that I was anti anything else. I loved all of those other pieces. I love horror. I love the supernatural. I love beheadings and weird reveals of people who are related over time and space. And I would invite all of those pieces into a Tachyon Web series. But for me, I chose this book with purpose because I really do love this book. And for me, it was the ultimate escape when I was me in 1986. And it was a delightful escape for me again here in 2021.
That's awesome. So 4.5.
Yes.
And do you want to sprinkle some honey or something on that half just to give it a little extra? Just
a little extra. Well, frankly,
wrap it in an O-pan. See what color it turns.
Exactly. I would say, I would sprinkle all of the rice-looking ambrosia salad goodness on it. Full fruit salad that travels well in space in heavy fructose corn syrup. Because that is the deliciousness of it for me. And I just really dig the themes, and I really dig the other piece that I would offer is reading it again. Thanks for doing the math, Coop. 35 years later,
5 years.
There's a lot of consistency in the experience of the idea of space travel, and that we have people buying tickets to go to the moon. We have people on this planet literally planning to live on Mars at this point. Mm-hmm. Now I realize it's all in research and all of those pieces, but that was not on the radar screen in 1986. So I feel like it stands up in a way that delighted me so much.
Especially when you consider 35 years ago, it was just the anniversary of the Challenger disaster as well.
Absolutely. So
that felt like the biggest setback we could have possibly had for the space program.
Absolutely. And sending random humans into space, even though moving beyond the Tachyon Web was only for the military, I would offer that normalizing of space travel is just so delicious for me. And despite all of the pull to not be those kinds of sojourners and those kinds of explorers, it speaks to my heart.
Cassie?
I really like his sci-fi stuff. But I will say, since we're comparing it to other Pike books, like the other sci-fi books he's written that I've read, I've liked more. And I think I looked into it when I was reading this one too, is because those came out in 92 and 96 respectively, I think. So maybe it was just that like he improved upon what he was doing before. So I like those a bit more. So if I'm comparing this one and rating it solely based on like his other books, I would give this one 3 stars with like a little Nova extra. Because it wasn't, I liked it more than just saying like, oh, I liked it. It was okay. But it wasn't 4. And I don't think maybe 3.5 with the Nova.
Okay. That's fair, because a Nova does get bigger. So therefore, 3.5 would, yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah.
Becca, you've remained rather neutral on the book, so I'm curious about your score.
I think I'd give it 2 yellow lit O-pants because they're happy.
The yellow is happy though.
Yeah,
so that's good.
So happy pants. It was just pretty basic to me.
Happy pants.
Yeah.
I love happy pants as a rating device.
Yeah.
Oh, definitely.
I try to keep
Becca has almost ceased in giving Pikes at all and is now just giving elements of the plot.
Yeah. I don't like
this one
Pikes.
gets
I
happy
like
pants.
Okay, well, I'm going to go with 3. I was a little down on it at the beginning, but upon reflection, I've moved up. I was going to give it a 2, I think, when I came in, but I'm going to give it a 3 now. It is, sci-fi has never really been my genre, and so it was just unexpectedly sci-fi for me. Now that I have experienced a Pike sci-fi, I don't think it will be as jarring to read another one. But like having no villain is just weird for a Pike book. So it was an interesting exploration, and I would love to see more from it. And that's it. That brings us 2 in a row now, where we want very much sequels, as opposed to all the ones that Cassie's just writing sidequels to. Because Cassie has become obsessed with several small elements of plots from other books and just wants to write about those.
There's so much you could do with them, and I'm just going to write a whole series, and it's just going to be like dedicated to Christopher Pike. Please notice me.
Is that what it's going to say on the dedication page?
Yeah, the whole thing. Yeah,
just
every single book dedicated to Christopher Pike. Please notice me.
That's so cute.
Well, Jen, this was so much fun. It was great podcasting with you again. I miss it. We really appreciated you joining us here. Would you like to tell people where they can find more of you? It's okay to tell them about the swing set.
Sure. Certainly everyone's invited to that particular party. You can find me at Ginger Bentham. My favorite spot is on Instagram. I'm on Twitter as well. But definitely I enjoy playing on Instagram, and it is very bookish. It's very bibliophile. It's very, very, very nerdy, as well as all of the other pieces of the puzzle that are me. So certainly people can find me there. And I am always happy to be reminded of which Christopher Pike books. And unlike you, Coop, I really want to read the smelly, delicious first edition type Christopher Pike books. And when I say smelly, I mean like, that bibliophile.
They smell like a book. Yeah. I get it.
They just smell so good. Like, I just did it right now. So delicious. So yeah. So ping me there. Books are as consistent with my life as all of the other things that we talk about relationship-wise and otherwise. So this was a pleasure. I was grateful to meet you both, Becca and Cassie. Thank you for coming along on my little sci-fi Christopher Pike adventure. Yeah. I appreciated being able to move you into this realm together to hear what you each had to say about it.
Yeah, thank you. It was a lot of fun. It was really nice meeting you, and I'm glad we could talk about this one, since it was like all of our first ones. I'm glad it was one that you loved so much, because it's like we have like an expert now here to talk about it with us, which is really cool.
And maybe Jen will come back for one of the other sci-fi ones.
Yeah, we'll have to see what we have open and get back to you. If
We have
I mean,
other
if you
sci-fi
don't,
coming.
yeah, if you don't care and you're open, we definitely can toss some books at you.
Oh my
I feel like I
gosh.
could throw any book at Jen and she'd be on board.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. Without question. I love talking books. This was delightful. Coop, I love hearing you able to talk books, and yes, being in this space together is our natural habitat. And I'm very, very grateful to have shared the space with all three of you. Thank you for the invitation and the next invitation. And I'm already a yes. And whatever book it is, you could even subject me to some sort of like super whatever your favorites are, if you will. Because they're all still within my realm. There's a little counterculture, a little contrarian in me when it comes to Christopher Pike, and I'm grateful I was able to come here and represent it.
Okay, Cassie, want to tell us where we can find more of you online?
Yeah, you can find me. My blog is letsgetgalactic.com. You can also find me on Instagram and Twitter. My username is Control-Alt-Cassie, so CTRLALT. CASSIE. I also have a bookish Instagram. It's at Reading in a Prism if you like bookstagram type things. And then I also have an Etsy shop where I sell art and books and just a lot of different things. It is etsy.com/shop/letsgetgalacticart.
And Becca, how about you?
Yes, I have a blog where I mostly review books. That would be astoldbybex.wordpress.com. And I'm on Twitter at astoldbybex and Bookstagram at readwithbex.
And you can find me all over the place at Cooper S. Beckett and my new art account at Beckett Arts. And if you want to buy my books, you can do so at coopersbeckett.com. And really, if you buy them anywhere, I will be happy. So don't worry about direct purchases. But if you buy them from me, I will sign them. So how about that?
Fancy.
Yeah. So coopersbeckett.com, that's really where you can find me. Cassie, tell us where we can find the show.
You can follow us on all social media at the PikeCast. It's all one word. We'd really appreciate it if you'd share your books with us. We'd love to see them, especially if they're battered and old. That's Cooper's favorite. You can use the hashtag #ShowUsYourPike to show those to us, and we'll share them in our stories, or on Twitter, we'll retweet them. And then you can also find us on Patreon, patreon.com/thepikecast. And we have a Goodreads group, Read with the PikeCast, so you can read along with us.
And speaking of reading along with us, here is your homework, Pikers, for our next time. 1993's The Eternal Enemy. Now, I'm thinking back in my head, Cassie, is this the one where it looks like Picard is on the cover?
It is like a zombie Picard almost, and this is one I have not read, so I'm psyched.
Very, very excited.
It looks sci-fi-ish too, right?
Sci-fi-ish, but a little more horror, definitely.
Yeah,
I feel the horror is coming. There's going to be a bad guy in that book. I feel like.
I'm here for it.
It may be an eternal enemy of some sort. I like how embarrassed that laugh sounded.
I was like, he meant that as a joke, right?
Yeah, totally.
I appreciated it. I'm excited. We'll see you all there next week. No, in 2 weeks. Yay!
2 weeks, yes.
You survived the night, friends. You can peek out from under your covers and see the first blues of dawn out the window. Thanks for spending the night with the PikeCast, and we hope you'll join us again next time. Until then, Pikers, pleasant dreams.